Tonight, a new royal era begins as King Charles greets crowds after the death of his mother, Queen Elizabeth.
To my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey.
Royal TV history to be made tonight and surprising new titles for William and Kate.
From the MCG to Government House, emotions run high as Melbourne pays tribute.
And the Brownlow date moved with Collingwood's preliminary finals hopes on the line. Exclusive inside access at the MCG.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Mike Amor and Rebecca Maddern.
Good evening. King Charles III has paid tribute to his darling Mama in his first speech as king. In a moving primetime address, he promised to serve with loyalty, respect and love.
He also confirmed William and Kate would become the Prince and Princess of Wales. Hugh Whitfeld begins tonight's coverage.
They came to mourn a queen and were greeted by their new king. King Charles III embracing his new role, the public in return embracing him.
I'm going to take that kiss forever.
I kissed his hand as well. It was impulsive, but he's lovely. Kissed the king's hand.
These were symbolic and surprising steps, open and accessible. A declaration on how the reign of King Charles will look.
He's stopping.
Camilla is getting out of the car right now. The King is getting out of the vehicle right now. They're going to do a walkabout.
Propelling the monarchy further into modernity. He spent 8 minutes shaking hands, speaking to the crowd. King Charles making the people his priority. It was a moment of graciousness from a man who lost his mother just 24 hours before, but one who knows moments like this matter.
He loves the country and loves the people, and yeah, I hope he has an incredible reign.
It shows the proper strength that you need to have in a leader of a country to come down after such a tragedy.
It shows he's really sincere with his people.
From the very young to the not so young, the new king was celebrated by all ages. 96-year-old Guinevere Watson is visiting London from Perth, born just 3 weeks after Queen Elizabeth. She didn't want to miss this.
I'm just looking at all these people. I can't believe there's so many.
And today, Charles met dozens of them. The King earlier flew back to London from Balmoral, where he'd been by his mother's bedside. When he was last in the capital, he was a prince. He returned today as king. The royal standard now flying for him as his motorcade made its way to Buckingham Palace. Raised above the palace too, it's a flag never flown at half-mast, signifying the monarch is in residence. The palace where Charles was born, now his official home. Just 3 days after an audience with one monarch, Britain's new Prime Minister Liz Truss arrived at the palace for an audience with a second.
Your Majesty.
The King admitting he knew this day would one day come, but that didn't make today any easier.
It's the moment I've been dreading, as I know a lot of people have, but try and keep everything going.
Absolutely.
Come.
And he did, delivering his first official King speech, a televised address to his kingdom from the blue drawing room inside Buckingham Palace.
I speak to you today with feelings of profound sorrow. Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother, was an inspiration, an example to me and to all my family. And we owe her the most heartfelt debt any family could owe to their mother, for her love, affection, guidance, understanding and example.
Reaffirming his intention to serve as she did and for as long as he can. At 73, he knows he cannot hope for the historic reign of his mother.
As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation.
And he will do so with his Queen by his side.
I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla. In recognition of her own loyal public service since our marriage 17 years ago, she becomes my Queen Consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much.
He signalled his life and role will now change. A well-known environmentalist, he will be less vocal in his activism. As monarch, he must remain politically neutral. He'll also step back from his charity work. That will be handed to others, as will some of his titles. Firstborn son and heir, William, becomes the Prince of Wales. His wife, Catherine, the new Princess of Wales, a title last held by William's mother, Princess Diana.
Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground, where vital help can be given.
There were no new titles for second son Prince Harry and wife Meghan. No reference, in fact, to any title. Not forgotten, but clear. They're no longer key royals. Instead, simply Harry and Meghan.
I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas.
In the historic shift from one monarch to another, it could be easy to forget. At the heart of it all is a son mourning the loss of his beloved mother. His address ending on a very personal note.
And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
The Queen's body remains at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. People travelling there too to pay their respects. Smaller crowds than London, but the sentiment as significant.
The Queen's been part of our family's lives since we were born, and she was just an amazing woman who we just loved from the bottom of our hearts, and we're going to miss her dearly.
We just think it's such a loss for the country, and I just hope that King Charles can, even if he does half a job of what she did, I think we'd be delighted, if I'm honest.
A role King Charles III has spent his life preparing for.
He's going to do a great job. We love him as well.
In Balmoral, Scotland, Hugh Whitfield, 7 News.
The palace is yet to announce when the Queen's funeral will be held. Sarah Greenhalgh is outside Buckingham Palace. Sarah, it's set to be one of the biggest security operations ever mounted by British police.
9:17.
Beck, under those extraordinary plans to honour the Queen's, extensive plans rather to honour the Queen's extraordinary reign, police officers from right across the UK will be sent here to central London for the funeral, likely to be held next Monday, but to be confirmed by the government today. Monarchs and heads of states from right across the globe will gather at Westminster Abbey, including the United States President Joe Biden and our own Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. While the exact date of that state funeral is still being worked out, what we do know is that the period of national mourning here in Britain will continue until the funeral is over, while the royals will continue mourning for a further 7 days after that. As clock struck midday across the United Kingdom, the bells tolled in a solemn tribute to the Queen. From Westminster Abbey, at city cathedrals and at countless village churches, a well-planned, coordinated display of respect and mourning. Followed an hour later by a royal gun salute, 96 rounds, one for each year of the Queen's life. At the Tower of London, Hyde Park, Edinburgh Castle, Cardiff Castle, Hillsborough Castle in Northern Ireland, and from His Majesty's naval base Gibraltar.
Order, order.
In Britain's House of Commons, MPs from all sides were united in a minute's silence. Many sharing their memories of the Queen.
Only 3 days ago, when she saw off her 14th Prime Minister and welcomed her 15th, and I can tell you, in that audience, she was as radiant and as knowledgeable and as fascinated by politics as ever I can remember.
Theresa May recalling a moment when she dropped some cheese in front of the Queen during a picnic at Balmoral.
I picked up the cheese, put it on the plate and put it on the table. And I turned round to see that my every move had been watched very carefully by Her Majesty the Queen. I looked at her, she looked at me, and she just smiled.
Outside St Paul's Cathedral, Londoners paused for Charles's first speech as King.
May flights of angels.
Inside, a congregation united by the same common feelings of loss and grief. In June, members of the royal family came to this same cathedral for a service of thanksgiving during the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. No one wanted to believe that an evening of reflection and prayer would be necessary just 3 months on.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful service. In many ways, actually, it could have been a funeral for almost anybody, you know.
She was a mother. She had maternal instincts that defies any definition. It wasn't just her position, it was a personality that I really loved.
The service concluding with a historic moment, the first official rendition of Britain's national anthem under the reign of King Charles III. In London, Sarah Greenolch, 7 News.
Hugh Whitfeld is in Balmoral this evening, and Hugh, we're about to witness history like we've never seen before.
It'll be the first televised proclamation of a British monarch in history, Mike. The last time this happened, February 1952, a young Elizabeth transitioning from princess to queen. Barely anyone had a television and certainly no one had the internet. The Privy Council is made up of 700 members, although only 200 are usually active, advising the King or Queen of the day on their rights and responsibilities. It is made up of current and former UK Cabinet Ministers, opposition MPs, judicial leaders and senior royals, including Prince William and Camilla. It'll be meeting today as the Accession Council, overseeing the signing of documents proclaiming Charles as king. This is not a coronation, but it is a confirmation of the new king's service to the church, the state, and also his people. Following that, from the rooftop and the balcony, they will hail "God Save the King" before King Charles III begins a tour of this United Kingdom. Mike.
Hugh, thank you.
Melbourne is paying tribute in any way it can, starting last night at the MCG. Jodie Lee is there. Jodie, there'll be another minute's silence before tonight's Pies Fremantle final.
Beck, the 90,000-strong crowd will pause here at the G tonight to mark a minute's silence in honour of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. They did the same at yesterday's AFLW clash, although there were some concerns that those commemorations may have marred the significance of the Indigenous round, so they will be scrapped for the remainder of the weekend. Queen Elizabeth II visited the state of Victoria close to a dozen times throughout her reign, and she did come here to the G to officially open the 1970 VFL season. So many Victorians have fond personal memories of her time here, and they are just looking to pay tribute to the monarch in some way. Moments before the first bounce, a final farewell to the People's Queen. A minute's silence from the 60,000-strong crowd before the sounds of the English national anthem echoed through the MCG. Once God save the Queen, now King. Landmarks bathed in purple across the city.
She's the longest reigning queen, so she's had a lot. She's had a great impact on the world.
And the country.
She was Queen of Australia as well, so it's very good. She's on Opera House.
By morning, the queue of people outside Government House had grown, young and old compelled to commemorate the crown.
It's just really sad. Like, sorry, I'm going to get upset. Yeah. She's almost like the world's grandma, you know.
She brings the country together, and and really when we're going through really dark times back in the UK, like with COVID, she's a true leader.
Anglican Archbishop Philip Freer will tomorrow lead a solemn service for Her Majesty at St Paul's Cathedral.
So it's an opportunity of people, I think, offering those things before God, and just being in a sacred space of some reflection and contemplation.
Now King Charles III has been announced as the Queen's successor, members of Victorian Parliament will need to be sworn in again. That will happen at a special sitting of both houses on Tuesday, before Parliament adjourns for 7 days as a mark of respect. A pause marked the world over to honour a monarch who touched the world. Jodie Lee, 7 News.
Abbey Gelmi is standing by inside the MCG in Abbey. The Queen's funeral has led to a grand final week changer.
It has, Mike. The Brownlow medal has officially been moved. Live to Mitch Cleary with the details. And Mitch, the AFL's big night has been brought forward.
Good evening, Abbey. Confirmation today the AFL has brought forward that Brownlow medal by 24 hours. So it's moved from the Monday night to now the Sunday night, September 18. It'll still start at 7 p.m. on the screens of 7 right here. Tonight, more than 90,000 fans expected to pack the stands here behind us. Around 6 or 7 of those thousand will be Fremantle fans. Collingwood, they're hoping to extend their streak to 5 of years when the monarch has changed and Collingwood making a grand final. So a bit of history in the making to be made tonight. Last night, Brisbane beat Melbourne for a spot in a preliminary final against Geelong. They're likely, though, the Lions to be without Jared Berry. He's been offered a 1-match ban for this eye-gouging incident on Clayton Oliver from the Demons. So unless Jared Berry goes to the tribunal and contends that charge, he will likely miss that game against Geelong next week. A big week ahead potentially at the tribunal. Abbey?
Certainly is, Mitch. Thank you. Also coming up shortly, the latest on Luke Jackson's future and all the fallout from the Demons' straight sets finals exit.
We'll see you soon. Thanks, Abbey. It was hoped the Queen's death would bring Harry and William closer together again. Up next, why there are signs the brothers remain distant.
Also, a moving tribute to the Queen in Canberra.
The new line of succession, now Charles is king.
And there's more wet weather on the way, along with an icy wind change. I'll have the full forecast after sport.
It was hoped the Queen's death would mend the rift between her grandchildren, Harry and William, but any chance of that appears dashed. The Duke of Sussex was the first to leave Balmoral, with reports Meghan was stopped from visiting altogether.
An early exit for the Duke of Sussex. Harry, the King's youngest son, fast-tracked airside at Aberdeen Airport. On a commercial plane shortly before his brother boarded a jet. Their final destination, Windsor, staying hundreds of metres apart. The Duke by himself mingling with staff before boarding a British Airways flight to London, ending a very short-lived family reunion.
The Queen, still magnanimous and loving to the end, would have wanted him to go to Balmoral, would have wanted to give her grandson a hug.
The last to arrive at Balmoral and the first to leave after his wife Meghan was reportedly blocked from attending.
It's gone
pretty much bad to worse from the Sussexes side.
Harry and Meghan are expected to delay their trip home to California and instead remain here in the UK until the Queen's funeral. Their home, Frogmore Cottage, here on the grounds of Windsor Castle, just a stone's throw from the Cambridges.
Kate seen in Windsor for the first time since the Queen's death. Her husband William leaving Balmoral just hours after Harry, a sign the brotherly rift is as deep as ever.
I'm sure he will be very much a part of the funeral. He's lost his grandmother. So I think family will come through.
As the royals look to the future and a slimmed-down monarchy.
Life is going to change on a personal level dramatically for the new Prince and Princess of Wales. Now, William and Kate have been so fortunate that they have been able to raise their children with William only second in line to the throne. That meant he didn't have anything like the pressure that Prince Charles had.
Despite tensions in the royal household and Harry's dismissal of his royal ties, he remains in line for the throne. With the proclamation of King Charles III, Prince William becomes the heir in waiting. His 3 children are next. Prince George, the second in line, followed by Charlotte, and Louis, 4th in line. Prince Harry is 5th after them, along with his 2 children, Archie and Lilibet, 6th and 7th. That's despite them living in the United States and Lilibet being born there. Prince Andrew, 8th in line, but unlikely to ever be considered.
Ash Mullaney there. World leaders are sharing their adoration for the Queen. French President Emmanuel Macron reflected on his relationship with Her Majesty.
Elizabeth II mastered our language, loved our culture, and touched our hearts.
While in Washington, Union Jacks line Pennsylvania Avenue. Politicians from both sides have united to honour the Queen in a wreath-laying ceremony in Parliament House.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has praised the speech made by King Charles, calling the address extraordinarily fitting.
The mourning is deep, the rituals long established, but it's still taking time to get used to the royal rearrangement.
Prince Charles, I join, certainly King Charles, I join with him.
Joining with him, honouring his mother, leading floral tributes at Parliament's Queen's Terrace with Finance Minister Katie Gallagher, Governor-General David Hurley, MPs and foreign ambassadors.
It says something about the way that the Queen was admired around the world.
Also paying tribute opposition leader Peter Dutton.
She was able to connect with people from all walks of life, and that's why there's such a deep sense of grief and that mourning.
Tomorrow, the ceremonial change. The Governor-General will read the official proclamation of King Charles III with a 21-gun salute outside Parliament. The Queen honoured last night at the Australian War Memorial, a place she visited 7 times. Australia's affection for Queen Elizabeth rarely wavered, but whether the nation will warm in the same way to King Charles is an open question. Natalie Pearce and daughter Aurora among those signing Parliament's condolence book today.
Do you think King Charles will be a good king? Yeah, I think so.
Sarah Ralston leaving flowers and a personal message for the Queen.
I wrote, "Rest in peace, my Queen. Rest in peace with your beloved Prince Philip."
Anthony Albanese spoke overnight with his new British counterpart Liz Truss, passing on our nation's sympathies and she hers to the people of Australia.
We will meet when I am in the United Kingdom.
Flying there on Thursday with partner Jodie Hayden and the Governor-General and wife Linda for the Queen's funeral and to meet the new King, whom he'll remember to call
King Charles III.
Mark Riley reporting a tram tragedy has unfolded in front of shocked drivers. It happened on one of Melbourne's busiest roads. Details ahead.
Also, Bombers star Dyson Heppel's Albert Park home goes under the hammer.
And Flemington reflects on the Queen's passion for horse racing. A pedestrian has died after being hit by a tram in South Melbourne. They were struck on Kingsway near York Street just after 1:30 this afternoon and died at the scene. Investigators are now trying to piece together how the tragedy unfolded and are hoping drivers might have dashcam footage to help.
A truck rollover caused headaches on the Western Highway this morning. Motorists faced lengthy delays after an empty truck flipped at Ballan just before 1 a.m. Melbourne-bound lanes were blocked as heavy haulage equipment was brought in to right the vehicle. The driver was taken to hospital. Home buyers are hunting bargains as interest rate rises spook many Victorians from looking at property. The number of houses being sold is falling, but one AFL star managed to sell his Albert Park home, even though it was passed in at auction.
A double-storey 5-bedroom home.
At $972,000 sold!
It's a buyer's market this spring with more opportunity to grab a bargain like this one in Point Cook.
Very different conditions compared to the last couple of years where sellers were firmly in the driver's seat.
In the last 3 months, almost 60% of house sales in Melbourne went for under $1 million. There are also more homes to choose from with more sellers than buyers.
There's fewer new listings coming into the market, but listings are starting to pile up, mostly because there's less demand.
As interest rates rise, you're always going to have reduced capacity for buyers to borrow.
There's been an average $56,000 price drop in Melbourne house values over the last 6 months.
We are expecting housing values to continue trending lower across most markets around Australia.
Competition for this Baldwin home started and ended strong, selling for almost $4 million. Bombers captain Dyson Heppel's Albert Park home also a hit. Sold after passing in.
More younger Victorians are putting off buying a home due to soaring interest rates. Even though property prices are falling, so too are the number of first home buyers.
Lenders are quite cautious now about lending to borrowers who may not have a large deposit.
800 homes in Melbourne will go under the hammer this week, the busiest city in Australia.
Quickly now, if you'd like to buy.
Kathleen O'Connor, 7 News.
Europe's biggest nuclear power plant is now operating in emergency mode, with Ukraine officials warning of an elevated risk of disaster. The shelling around Zaporizhzhia facility has caused a complete blackout, with off-site power deemed unreliable.
Let me be clear. The shelling around Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant must stop. There is no time to waste.
Russia and Ukraine are still blaming each other for attacks on the region.
Victorians have paused to reflect on Queen Elizabeth's reign and what she meant to them.
Horses were the monarch's major passion, and racegoers paid tribute on Flemington's first day of spring racing.
A silent, sombre moment at Flemington for Her Majesty. From those at the centre of the sport she adored, at a place she visited 3 times, this one in 1952. Epic scenes with a massive crowd and its famous roses still on show.
The Queen returned to the royal box in time to see the starters for the main race.
Today jockeys wore black armbands and one champion wore her silks.
I feel really honoured wearing Her Majesty's colours, and it's going to be sad that we won't get to see them on our racetracks.
The Queen's love for racing gave us glimpses of Her Majesty at her most candid, overjoyed as she celebrated wins, letting her regal guard down momentarily.
We were lucky enough to see one of her horses run here in the Melbourne Cup.
Racegoers queued to sign a condolence book, a white glove to keep it pristine.
I said, we'll always remember you.
I loved having you being our Queen, Love Piper. It was a bit hard to write with the glove on, but it was worth it.
Elsewhere, reflections of Her Majesty from first-hand experience.
And she was so genuine, and you could see that in her eyes when she spoke to you.
90-year-old Nance Grant met the Queen 3 times.
I couldn't take my eyes off her complexion. It was just peaches and cream.
As we slowly get used to the idea of a king, the image of the Queen, so widespread in pop culture on everything from cushions to Christmas decorations and posters, is likely to endure for decades to come.
It's always going to be an icon.
Dominique Kahn's love for what the Queen represents is in her Richmond shop and on her feet.
She plays a big impact in our lives. Why not, celebrate what she's done?
Celebration of a life in the front window of this Point Cook home.
She was just very dedicated, very loyal, her service to everybody.
Feeling the same as so many.
Utterly shattered, still in shock, to be honest.
Paul Dowsley, 7 News.
Well, Mark Riley joins us now from Parliament House. Good evening, Mark. It'll be a big ceremonial day there in Canberra tomorrow.
Good evening, Beck. It sure will be, starting at Government House in the morning, where Governor-General David Hurley will convene a meeting of what's called the Executive Council of Ministers, during which Prime Minister Anthony Albanese will formally ask General Hurley to issue the proclamation of the new king. Now, that will occur in the forecourt of Parliament House here late morning. The Parliament itself has been suspended for the 2-week period of mourning, not a constitutional requirement as such, more a question of protocol. And arrangements are now being made for a memorial service here to be held on a day of national remembrance, some days after the Queen's funeral. Beck.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Plans to redevelop Preston Market have divided opinion in the northern suburbs. Up next, we talk to stall holders about the owner's latest vision.
Also, why Qantas boss Alan Joyce is under fire for his pay packet.
Thousands of Victorian school children in a state spectacular.
And a great gathering of golden retrievers digging for a world record in Melbourne's southeast. Under fire over his pay rise despite airline troubles over the past few months. Alan Joyce was paid $5.5 million last year. More than half of that was in bonus shares. He took home just over $2 million, up 15% on the year before. Mr Joyce's pay was reduced during the pandemic. Qantas has faced passenger anger this year over flight delays and staff shortages.
Preston Market's future remains up in the air as the owners fight to get local support for a redevelopment. The long-running issue has divided the northern suburbs, and it's not over yet.
A local favourite for more than 50 years. The first stage of the Preston Market redevelopment is looming.
There's always change that makes the difference.
The owners want to modernise, introducing rooftop events and night markets. The fruit and vegetable block will remain the same, while the meat and deli stalls will be revitalised.
The train station they've just done is amazing. Like, if they can updo that and keep the same sort of feel with 4-day trade or 5-day trade, I think that's awesome.
The big stumbling block is the size of a proposed apartment complex. The owners want to build up to 2,200 apartments. Darebin Council has pitched a plan for 1,200 dwellings.
If they design it well, it should be all good.
But not everyone agrees.
To be honest, I prefer it the way it is. We all grew up in the area and we've all visited the market over the years, and to see it change may not be a good thing.
People come from all parts of the streets of Melbourne and just have a look around.
And the energy is great. It's got a good vibe about it as well. I love it. I come every week. So I leave it as it is.
The owners of the market say the new development will continue to serve as a community hub and will be holding a meeting next Wednesday to outline plans to stallholders.
Kind of excited in that way to see the progress.
I hope it doesn't hurt the market because it's a heritage market. We'll wait and see if it does go ahead.
The final decision rests with the Planning Minister. Ellie Wicks, 7 News.
3,000 budding singers, dancers and musicians have taken to the stage for the return of the State School Spectacular. Daredevil skaters and circus performers put on a show at John Cain Arena, while the crowd was left spellbound by a giant puppetry act.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, take care TCB.
This year's theme was Time to Shine.
More than 1,000 dog owners and their pets have gathered in Melbourne's southeast, smashing the world record for the largest ever Golden Retriever meetup. The annual Gold Rush event in Skye raises vital funds for the Golden Retriever Rescue Charity. The previous record was set in 2019 when 991 pups gathered in Colorado.
Returning to Abbey, Gelmi now inside the MCG ahead of tonight's cutthroat final between the Magpies and Dockers. Abbey?
Well, Beck, Collingwood's incredible season goes on the line tonight. Coming up next, how a Magpie bull and the need for speed could be the key to landing a spot in the preliminary finals. Also, where to next for the fallen D's as a suspended lion pleads his innocence. Aaron Finch calls time, why the Victorian denied himself a fairy tale send-off, and how this teenage sensation is just one win away from being top of the world. Welcome back to the MCG, where Collingwood's season goes on the line with the preliminary final spot up for grabs against Fremantle. Returning to Mitch Cleary now, and Mitch, the final teams are in.
Abbey, there's no late changes for either side tonight. Josh Carmichael, the starting sub at Collingwood, Bailey Banfield at Fremantle. It's win or go home tonight. A spot in next week's prelim against Sydney goes on the line. The Pies will be hoping to draw on that winning mentality as outlined by coach Craig McRae. They'll do it without vice-captain Taylor Adams, opening the door for more midfield minutes of Braden Maynard and a couple of teammates.
Well, he might. We've got Trent Bianco coming in. He sort of supplements the wing and half forward and gives us more opportunity to do things with Steele, maybe through the midfield, or Josh Dacos. So he gives us that flexibility. So it's a different look tonight. It's just a bit of an insight into Craig's mind, isn't it? And how he really rates the behaviours of players and people and that winning attitude.
After 7 wins by a goal or less this season, Collingwood, they lost their first game by that margin just last week. Abbey, let's hope we're in for another nail-biter tonight.
Agreed, Mitch. Thank you. The hero behind the biggest upset of the final series so far looks headed for the tribunal. Live now to Natalie Yanides and Nat, the Lions are likely to roll the dice with Jared Berry's suspension.
Abbey, Jared Berry has been handed a 1-game ban for making unreasonable or unnecessary contact to Clayton Oliver's face during the Lions' win over Melbourne. The incident was deemed intentional with low impact and high contact. Now, I've spoken to the Lions, who say they are considering their options, but with a preliminary final on the line, Brisbane will almost certainly contest the charge. Berry spoke to 7 News about the incident last night and maintained his innocence.
He had me pinned down. I was sort of just like, didn't have much vision. I was reaching and it obviously wasn't purposeful, but that's just part of footy and hopefully it doesn't look too bad.
It takes some of the shine off what was an incredible win for Brisbane, who put an end to Melbourne's premiership defence.
Christian Petrarca could barely walk into Melbourne HQ. The midfielder, one of the D's best last night, despite playing with a broken leg. He wasn't the only one feeling sore and sorry after the reigning premiers bowed out in straight sets.
Still stinging, still really disappointing.
You feel pretty empty at the moment, but as I said, we'll look at our wounds and come back better as a footy club.
Attention now turns to Luke Jackson's future. The ruckman yet to decide if he'll remain with Melbourne or head home to WA.
Obviously I'd love for Jacko to stay, but he's got a lot to weigh up as to that decision.
As Melbourne's season ended in tears, Lincoln McCarthy came under fire for mocking defender Harrison Petty.
I'd be pretty disappointed if that was the case. But that's not really our issue, that's their issue, it's their footy club, that's how they want to act.
It's part of the game, there's obviously a line, but I don't think there was too much in that.
It was Brisbane's first win at the MCG in 8 years. Cam Rayner's dad, John, with the loudest roar in the Lions room. Get a dog up here! They'll return on Friday to tackle minor premiers Geelong for a spot in the grand final.
We'll have our work cut out, but we'll come with the same attitude that we came with tonight.
A dislocated finger for Dane Zorko, Brisbane's main injury concern. They will regain Joe Danaher following the birth of his daughter. Natalie Yanides, 7 News.
Collingwood has jumped to the top of the AFLW ladder after holding on for a nail-biting 4-point win over the previously undefeated Geelong at the Cattery. Earlier, North Melbourne suffered its second loss of the season, going down by 14 points to Adelaide. Last night, the Bulldogs made it 3 from 3 with a thrilling 3-point victory over Fremantle. Aaron Finch will play his final one-day international tomorrow after announcing his retirement from 50-over cricket. Pat Cummins, Steve Smith and potentially David Warner are all in the mix to take over the reins as captain. Finch told his teammates earlier in the week.
Maxie was in tears. That was quite funny. Could have tried to play another series. That would have been a bit of a fairy tale finishing at the MCG, but I think that's never been my style.
His all-class Finch will continue on as Aussie captain for the upcoming T20 World Cup. Melbourne Storm is locked in a pulsating elimination final at Amy Park. Back-to-back tries to Xavier Coates gave the Storm the lead in the opening half before the Raiders hit back with 2 tries of their own. At the start of the second half, the Storm trailed 12 points to 16. Spain's Carlos Alcaraz has won his way through to his first Grand Slam final with an epic 5-set victory over American Francis Tiafoe at the US Open. The 19-year-old will now take on Norway's Casper Ruud in the decider, with the winner also to claim the world #1 ranking. And after securing a record $4.5 billion TV rights deal during the week, it seems that Gillum McLachlan is going out in style. Last night, the AFL CEO showed off some of his moves with singer Delta Goodrem at a pre-match function at the MCG. Tonight, he joined Pete Murray on stage. Well, Gill's next big agenda item is securing a team for Tasmania. He may not be appearing on Australia's Got Talent, though, because that was
a bit
pretty
harsh.
interesting, guys.
I think he's got some decent dance moves. I'm not sure about the singing.
Yeah, that's a no from me. He's having a really good time, isn't he?
Isn't he?
Making the most of it.
OK, thank you. Sonia Marinelli joins us now with the weather details. And Son, we're about to board a spring roller coaster.
We certainly are, Mike. First, there'll be showers, followed by a blast of cold air, but then a burst of warm sunshine. I'll have the details next. Hello there. Well, spring weather is famous for being up and down. It's about to live up to that reputation. Outside now, there's still quite a lot of cloud around, so the chance of a shower around town, but less likely here in the city. We are under westerly winds at the moment, but a cold front arrives later tomorrow. That's going to ramp up the showers and open the door to a very cold wind change. But even though we did reach 15.6 degrees in the city today, it didn't feel any warmer than 10 degrees, all thanks to that wind and, of course, the lack of sunshine. At Geelong, it got to 16 degrees, 15 for those at Point Cook. We did have a band of heavy showers move through overnight, but they were patchy today with less than a millimetre recorded. There were bigger totals up on the Alps as those showers moved out to the east. High pressure now building over the Bight. That's going to eventually clear out the rain clouds. But first, we've got a weak cold front to contend with. It's going to move across the state during Sunday. It'll keep the showers going into the first few days of next week. It does fine up, though, and warm up very briefly on Wednesday, but we've got a steady stream of showers after that, so it's typical spring weather. Let's head straight to Sunday's forecast now. Early morning areas of frost and fog up in the north, then partly cloudy and mostly dry there. But there'll be scattered showers on and south of the Divide, increasing with the passage of this cold front. Winds moderate westerlies before they gradually shift around to the south. Around Melbourne and Geelong, we are starting the day dry and partly cloudy with temperatures in the single figures, and we'll be under a breezy westerly with tops of 16 or 17 degrees. The showery change moves into Geelong first, then through Melbourne during the afternoon, so expect most of this to fall later in the day. In the city, a low of 8, a top of 17 degrees. Expect breezy westerly winds and showers to develop, and that's going to happen through the afternoon and into the evening. But after that, the cold air kicks in. On Monday, we're heading for just 13 degrees with showers. They'll ease early on Tuesday to a dry top of 14 degrees. And Wednesday is the pick of the bunch. That's our nice day, mostly sunny and a warm top of 19 degrees. But then the showers return from Thursday, and we've got a run of 16-degree maximums right through until the weekend. But for now, mostly dry patch until those showers ramp up tomorrow afternoon. It's not overly cold. We're heading for 17 degrees, just like today, but there's a blast of cold air coming in behind it, and we're going to feel that on Monday.
Oh,
looking forward to Wednesday. Thank you.
And that's 7 News for this Saturday, the 10th of September.
And Natalie Barr and David Koch will be live in London from 5 a.m. tomorrow for a special edition of Weekend Sunrise.
But for now, we're live to the MCG for the Pies Dockers semi-final from the 7 News team. Have a great night.